Should I start? Okay. So, hello friends, namaste, and welcome to Guess the Remedy. We did this exercise around 3 4 days ago, and let's see another case today. So, the case is of a 36-year-old male, and he has two different symptoms, two current symptoms. One is sinusitis, and two is IBS. So for the sinusitis, he says there is allergic rhinitis, there's typical sneezing, runny nose, etc. when he has exposure to dust, exposure to pollen, and along with that, whenever there is this rhinitis, etc., there is loss of smell, loss of taste. All these happen, and this in this whole complaint I did not find anything which was very characteristic other than this loss of taste and loss of smell going together. So I shifted my attention to the IBS, and this is what happens in the IBS. I asked him about the IBS, and he says, actually, this started very slowly. It started in 2006 when I had gastritis. There was heartburn, etc. I used to have burps, a lot of burps, and it was helped a little bit with antacids. And after that, I was fairly adjusted to this situation of the burps and heartburn. But in 2010, it developed again. There was a injury due to Ryle's tube, and it attacked again. That was his words. But he says in 2011 20 to 2014 there was a lot of IBS, and it was treated quite heavily with allopathic medication. For the IBS symptoms, he says a lot of things affect his stools quite badly. There's milk, there's salad, he cannot have raw foods, he cannot have ginger. The ginger is very, very problematic. There's spices, there's bread, there's raw things. Too many things aggravate. Therefore, he says, I just avoid them. So sandwiches, bread, etc., he generalizes it to baked food. It aggravates. And then I ask him more about this, and he says, actually, doctor, this keeps increasing and decreasing. Remitting, relapsing situation is there. It keeps coming up and keeps going down. But along with it, there is acidity still, which started earlier. There is acidity still, and this acidity is aggravated by having tea. He says, I am actually very irritated, very vexed due to this IBS. It has been running quite long now. You can imagine, since 2011 it has been there, and this case was taken in 2020. So almost 10 years it has been there, and there is distension. There was distension which was not ameliorated by eructations, but now it seems there is no bloating. And he says now, meaning he is staying away from home, so in this situation it is not as much, but when he goes at home it is more. So I ask him, what is at home, what is the difference? He says, when I'm staying separately, there's nobody to force me. At home, my mother and my wife coax me a lot into eating much more than what I feel full with. So it's like I have had a full meal, and then my wife would say, okay, just one more laddu. And if I say no, she'll feel bad about it. And after the laddu, my mother will say, oh, it's okay, you can just have a little more rice. See, I have made this special sabzi for you. You can have a little more. And if I say no, oh, you took what your wife gave, and now you're not taking what I have given. So there is always this push going on for, I should have more and more. And therefore, what I do is when I am half full, I will start saying no. But in spite of that, there is a quite a bit of bloating when I go home. Then he says, I also have urge for motion immediately after eating. Now, since this statement comes immediately after what he has said happens at home, I ask him, when does this happen? And he says, no, no, this happens anytime, anywhere, even if I'm here, there, it doesn't matter. It has been there for around 10 years, off and on, it is there. And this is immediately after eating, there is urge to pass stool. And when I go and pass stool, it is a pasty, offensive, sticky stool. And I cannot control the urge. Once it comes, I cannot control the urge. So I said, okay, tell me about cannot control the urge. And he says, there's a lot of fear of passing it involuntarily. I said, fear of passing involuntarily? And he says, yeah, it feels so dirty, liquid stool about to come out. It feels so dirty. If I don't go and if it passes in my pants, then it will be so dirty. And it's liquid, so it can come out any time. So I said, okay, so what's the problem? You can, once you have had your food, you can go and pass stools. So he says, no, the problem is that now, especially that I am staying away from home, what happens is once I have food, if I have to go and pass stools, then I have to go and first check if the place is clean or not. If it's not clean, I just cannot pass stool. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem. And then he says that actually, in even for this symptom and for the pasty stool, isabgol has helped me. Now, this was a little surprising to me at the time when I took the case, because I always knew that this specific Ayurvedic medicine, isabgol, is for the sake of treating constipation, where it will make you pass stools, or if you are having normal stools and if you take it, it will give you loose stools. But in his case, it had helped. So I checked up on the net, and fair enough, almost like similia similibus curanter, it is given even in loose stools, and it can cause constipation also. So then I asked him, okay, tell me more about this stool and having fear of passing involuntary stool, etc. And he says, actually, doctor, you know what? In my childhood, there was a big issue about passing stools. And the issue was that until my second standard, I would almost regularly pass stool involuntarily. And in fact, up to my fifth standard, I had this problem. And in the fifth standard, I remember very clearly there were 2 or 3 episodes of passing involuntary stools. So I said, okay, tell me more about this involuntary stools being passed for such a long time, or such a delayed age. And he says, actually, when I was a kid, maybe 3 years, 2 years, or even younger, my mother tells me that I would never go and pass stool until I get permission from my mother. So if I have to pass stool and I say, okay, I want to go and pass stool, and my mother doesn't react, or she says, no, not now, then I would not go. Then I would just stay put. I would just stand there. And she has experimented with this for quite a few times, and I would stand there, and as far as possible, I would control. But in the return, probably what happened is I lost all that control, and I started passing stools involuntarily. There's also one more thing which is important for me. I can't walk in the sun heat. If I walk in sun heat, I get an intense urge to stool. That is what he says. Okay. Then I ask him about his dreams, and he says he also has dreams of passing stools, and in that too, he is looking for the place, whether it is clean, whether it is not. Sometimes he finds a good place, sometimes he doesn't. If he doesn't, then he passes stool involuntary in his dreams, even today. And he about the dreams, he just gives a little, again, the dirty feeling that is much expected. So I don't get too much of an experience kind of a thing in the dreams, so I shift my attention to something else, and I said, tell me something more about you. And he says, doctor, I need perfection. I have to do things on my own. In a way, I am dominating, meaning thereby, if I want perfection in everything that is done. So my criteria to be satisfied with something, whether it be some work done, whether it be some food made, whatever it is, for me to be satisfied, it is very difficult. My criteria is too high. And he says, I cannot be satisfied if there is no perfection in the work. I need this perfection. And if I don't get the perfection, then I feel I am being cheated. In a way, if you can call me conscientious, because in my work I will try to be as perfect as possible. Till the time I am perfect, I will not get the feeling of satisfaction. So he gives an example here. In his work, he has done graduation, then he has done post graduation. Then he felt, no, this is not enough. So he took another postgraduate diploma in India itself. Then he felt, no, this is not enough. So I have to have my thing perfect. So he went to Canada and he took a degree over there. Now, that degree, it seems, is one of the most difficult things to get into. But he did all the hard work, he got into it. Not only that, again, passing out is quite difficult. So he passed that out. And only after that, he felt, okay, now I can do something in my field. That's the kind of perfection that he needs. So I asked him, okay, tell me, if you had started working before you felt satisfied with what you had done, how would it feel? He says, it will feel dirty. How can I do something which is below standards? I have to be the best. It will feel dirty about myself. So I say, okay, tell me more about this perfection thing. And he says, everything should be well organized, well managed. It has to be systematic. There can be no loopholes. It cannot be haphazard. My work has to be perfect. I cannot stand the work of others because generally they are not perfect. And this is where I become dominating. You have to do it to the best. If your work is not correct, if you're not it is not up to the mark, I'm going to do it all over again. And then people feel very criticized, and they feel he's so dominating. But that's all that I want. It has to be perfect. The other thing I hate is backbiting. Whatever criticism has to be there, it has to be there right in front of me, in my face. You criticize me, I will accept it. I will improve my work. But you should not go and say behind my back, he is like that, he is like that. It won't work, because that is not going to help me improve. In fact, if you criticize me more, I am going to be happier. So, with so much of the case, uh, I thought this could be a fairly good point to prescribe, and I felt I might know the remedy. But there's something more to it. Anyways, like I felt, if you all do feel that there's something which you can prescribe, I would like to know your comments. Okay. Arsenic is a good suggestion with the kind of perfection he needs. It's a very good suggestion. Lack remedy. Okay. Some more. Carcinosin or a met. Okay. Arsalb. So quite a few remedies coming up on the basis of only Naxwamika again. Only the perfectionism is being seen. Hellos. Now we have seen the only the physical part of involuntary stools. So this is where I feel uh, what we should understand is that this is an individual. This is a person that we are treating. So if we look at the perfection alone, it is not going to be enough. The perfection alone will give us at least 30-40 remedies, if not 100 remedies, because so many remedies have this perfection. The cancer miasm as a whole has so much of perfection in it, but his thing is more than that. I will come to that more thing, but in the case itself, how can we understand that which is common to the mind and the body? That is what we have to try and understand. So here in this area, I have found one thing is very, very reliable if you can find it in a case. And that one thing is, if you can find what is the stress factor which started the whole thing, which triggered the whole thing. If we can find that, then it works out really well. So this causative factor is one of the connecting link for me in most of the cases, and this causative factor is found when the symptoms actually started. So I look for the cause, physical as well as mental, in that area. And when I ask him about this starting point, he says actually it started almost a month or so after my father expired. And I say, okay, tell me more about this. How, what it felt like, when did it happen, what happened? And he says it actually happened when I was hardly 3 or 5 years of age. Now he told me the exact age. I forget that. He was maybe 5 years of age, and he says even at that point, in such a young age, I could understand that this is going to be the biggest lack in my life. This is going to be the most important lack in my life, and nobody is ever going to be able to fill it. I was actually quite strongly attached to my father, and I could feel his absence. So I said, okay, tell me more about this absence of your father and most important lack of your life. He says it is the support. It is something that cannot be explained. Now, when some person feels it so deeply, it is going to be the most important thing in his life. So I say, okay, tell me more about this important lack of your life. And he says, doctor, actually, in that situation, in such a young age also, I could feel that although I was staying in a joint family, I had elder cousins, etc., but my mother and my younger sister were my responsibility. That is what I was feeling. It was a very deep feeling of responsibility. And as I grew up, I could see that my cousins and my uncles were not helping us so much. So this feeling of responsibility only grew further and further. In fact, even though they did not help us as much, I started feeling that responsibility even for them. That is the way I have been brought up, and I have come up that way. My feeling of responsibility is the highest. Even today, when I even today when I am alone, I am staying away from my house. When I am alone, I feel uh, I'm so overwhelmed by this thought of responsibility for my mother, my wife, and my sister. But that is, it takes over sometimes. But when I am in a thoughtful state, all this comes back to one point, and that point is, uh, only if my father was there, he would have taken up all the responsibility. I might not have needed to be taking all this responsibility. Only if my father was there. So my father's passing away is the biggest curse in my life. Even today, I miss him the most. So I said, okay, tell me more about how this time passed. Uh, and he says, I could see that my mother was toiling, my brother was in problems, and I felt I should be doing things for them. And I was so young, I couldn't do anything. But all the while, this feeling of almost like a guilt that I had to be doing something for them. So I would do things at home if I couldn't, um, earn. So I asked him, tell me how did you react to this, and how what you felt more. And he says the reaction was, why me? Why me? And he's almost on the verge of crying when he says, why me? He says, in fact, when my father passed away, there had to be some rituals that had to be done, and these things, shaving the mustache off, shaving the head off. He says, just don't ask me to do all this. I am not going to do this. If there is a God, he cannot be like this. He cannot be so unjust. For such a young boy, how can God take away his father? I used to be irritated at the mention of God even later for many, many years. So, with all this, I had a fair idea, and I said, okay, I understood most of this, but I did not understand if your cousins and the extended family did not help you, why did you start having feeling of responsibility for them too? And he says, I don't want to be in the bad books of anybody. I just don't want to be in the bad books of anybody. So in that sense, if they are my relatives, I should not be indifferent. So what will happen if you are indifferent, if you are in the bad books of anybody? He says, see, my work and my name is associated with my family. My mother would be let down in front of others if I don't behave properly. People will say she has not brought me up properly. That is the kind of feelings I have about this. That is why I started becoming responsible even for them. So, with that, the case is completed. If anybody has any other suggestions, I would like to take them. I can see sixth row, ferrum met, Staphylococcus agria. One doctor suggesting many remedies. Feeling of injustice. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Any other thought coming to mind? Any remedy? No? So, this is where I come from. Uh, like I said, in almost in every case, the link between the mind and the body is very, very important. So, what is the link here? The link, although the patient doesn't mention it that way, he at least mentions this much, that when the symptoms started, it was just after his father's death. So we can easily take ailments from death of father, ailments from grief of death of father, ailments from shock, whatever. But what is his feeling? His feeling is, for a 5-year-old kid, he is feeling too much of responsibility. And he feels this is a loss or a lack which is never going to be filled up. Now, just although I am only replicating what he said, you can realize from the importance or the stress I am laying on each word. Never going to be filled up. So, a lack which is never going to be filled up gives us the mineral kingdom, and with so much of responsibility, it gives us the 6th row, but it's not just the 6th row. If you can see, there is so much attachment with his father, and there is so much grief associated. Not only that, even in the later years, what happens is he feels responsible for even those who did not help them during their bad times. And why that? It's not out of sympathy, empathy, or anything. It is out of that my image should be maintained. It should not be a it should not be a bad image. So if I have to be a good boy, then I have to be like this, taking responsibility of everybody. So image is also, identity is also important for this person. So row 6 and row 3. Now row 6, if we see the rubric, responsibility unusual aggravates, is aurum. Responsibility towards others, responsibility too strong, is aurum. So those who said aurum are partly correct. But it's not just aurum. It's also about, this is a rubric conscientious about trifles, which he is. It's a huge rubric, 133 remedies. But we have to also check the physical symptoms that come up. And they are urging while walking. If you see this rubric, okay, Mercurius is there, but rectum walking aggravates, again a bigger rubric, and you will be able to see the remedies. Natrum mur in this. So this was a synthetic prescription. Smell wanting, lost, especially with loss of taste. Again you see natrum mur over here. This was a synthetic prescription. What I gave him was aurum mur natronatum. Now, with aurum mur natronatum, what happened is his IBS symptoms settled down. But we were not so sure of the follow-up because, as he said, when he's staying away from home, things are fairly settled down. He doesn't have the bloating, he doesn't have the eructations. Sometimes the stools are pasty, so we were not so sure. Slowly, his smell started improving, and then the taste started improving. So all his three symptoms started going down. He had one, so to say, attack or episode of allergic rhinitis after that, and the same remedy helped him. And all in all, his symptoms just slowly faded away, and today he is fit and fine. That's the case for you with Guess the Remedy. Now, my point to be put forth to you all was that there has to be a connection between the mind and the body. Now, sometimes you may find it in the modalities, sometimes you may find it in the sensation, but quite a few times I find it in the causative modality. And this causative modality is one, it is fairly traceable, or it is easy to find out, and there are other connections which of course we can find out, but this one is the one I find more often than not. And here is where we are going to talk about many things, out of which I will be talking about correlation between pathology and mental cause. So here in this case, the connection was not just his father passing away and the responsibility, it was also having IBS, sometimes having constipation, sometimes having loose motions, and on the mental plane, on a similar note, sometimes just getting drowned in the grief of his father even today at an age 36. So that was the connection which I could find, and which actually led me to the remedy. So this correlation of pathology and mental cause is what I'll be talking about, and you can join us on 27, 28, 29th September, which is the coming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can see the topics of each of the speaker. It's going to be very interesting because different approaches showing the integration of the old and new are going to be talked about. So I would like to welcome each of you on these days on Zoom. You can contact our friends Avni, Soni, Padmakar, Kirtiraj. And with that, I say thank you. If there are any questions, you can type in the comments. I'll be here for another minute so that if there are questions, I can answer.